I haven't seen him since the cancellation of the show, due to both of us being busy. It's been several years.
Recently, William Shatner drops a bombshell that fans thought they'd never hear. The man who boldly went where no one has gone before now exposes the shocking truths behind the Star Trek set. Rivalries, chaos, and secrets hidden for decades. Gone is the polished, heroic image. What really happened will leave you stunned. For the first time, Shatner tells it like it was, and it's nothing like the stories you've been told. 1. Kirk versus Spock rivalry and pulling focus. In the mid-1960s, as Star Trek entered production and its first seasons aired, William Shatner found himself at the center of a subtle but growing storm behind the scenes. The dynamic between Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock quickly became the emotional and dramatic anchor of the series, but the rising popularity of Leonard Nimoy's Spock created an unexpected tension. Fans responded intensely to Spock's calm logic, alien mystique, and unshakable presence, and the scripts increasingly gave him major emotional beats. According to cast and crew who later reflected on the era, this shift sparked a quiet professional rivalry between Shatner and Nimoy. Accounts from the set describe moments when Shatner grew concerned that Spock was pulling focus, especially in scenes where audience attention drifted toward Nimoy's understated but magnetic performance. Shatner, already established as the series' central star, reportedly pushed back at times, seeking adjustments to camera angles, dialogue distribution, or story emphasis to maintain Kirk's dominance. Nimoy, meanwhile, fought his own battles to protect Spock's integrity, occasionally clashing with writers and producers when he felt the character was mishandled. The competition did not escalate into open hostility, but it created an atmosphere of strain during key periods of filming. Gene Roddenberry, aware of the growing friction, privately warned cast members not to let ego or insecurity compromise the show. He emphasized ensemble unity, even as studio pressures and fan reactions made the hierarchy of attention more sensitive. Years later, Shatner acknowledged that tensions existed, admitting that the spotlight became a source of anxiety for multiple actors and that fame arrived unevenly, unsettling some relationships. Despite these conflicts, the Kirk-Spock dynamic ultimately became one of television's most enduring partnerships, born in part from that very pressure. 2. Publicity battles and production headaches. Photo spreads, publicity clearances. By the late 1960s, the behind-the-scenes tensions on Star Trek. The original series shifted from the soundstage to the public arena, fueled by the growing machinery of network press and national magazines. One incident became especially symbolic. A widely circulated TV guide photo spread that placed Leonard Nimoy's Spock front and center, reflecting his explosive surge in popularity. Fans were fascinated by the alien science officer, and the magazine's editors leaned into the phenomenon, presenting Spock as the unexpected breakout star. According to cast recollections, the spread landed poorly with William Shatner. Although he remained the official lead of the series, he felt increasingly overshadowed by Nimoy's cultural momentum. Complicating matters was Shatner's contractual leverage. His agreement granted him approval rights over much of the show's publicity, especially photography that positioned characters in relation to one another. When the TV guide feature bypassed his expectations, or, depending on the account, his explicit approval, it ignited disputes within the production ranks. These battles were not minor irritations. Cast members have since described how arguments over photographs, magazine placements, and promotional hierarchy ended up costing the show valuable shooting time. Meetings were called, tempers rose, and production days slowed as the creative team navigated the fallout. Some actors remembered an atmosphere thick with frustration, especially when they sensed that the conflict centered on maintaining star billing rather than serving the show's overall success. Shatner later acknowledged these episodes, admitting that the competition over publicity generated real resentment on set. The disputes became part of a larger pattern, an uncomfortable tug-of-war for visibility at a moment when the series was fighting for ratings and survival. Ironically, those same images that sparked turmoil helped cement Star Trek's cultural legacy, capturing the characters just as they were becoming icons. 3. Cast members' long-running complaints about Shatner's behavior. Throughout the late 1960s and into the 1970s, stories about William Shatner's on-set behavior circulated steadily among the Star Trek cast, creating a complicated legacy that lingered long after the show ended. Several cast members, most prominently Nichelle Nichols, George Takei, and at times James Doohan and Walter Koenig, recalled Shatner as someone who could be distant, self-focused, or dismissive. Their accounts often painted a portrait of a leading man preoccupied with maintaining his status at the center of the series, sometimes at the expense of camaraderie or equal recognition. Takei, for example, spoke openly over the years about moments when he felt Shatner ignored him or minimized his contributions. Nichols described stretches where Shatner's manner came off as cold, and Doohan once admitted to feeling frustrated by what he perceived as arrogance. Koenig, while less sharp in his criticism, still noted that Shatner sometimes dominated conversations or scenes in ways that affected the ensemble dynamic. These recollections varied in tone and intensity, but they built a shared narrative that the working atmosphere during the original series was more strained than fans might imagine from the show's optimistic vision. Shatner, for his part, has repeatedly expressed genuine surprise at these stories. In interviews and memoirs, he said he was shocked and even hurt when he learned how some colleagues had interpreted his behavior. According to him, he had been largely unaware of their feelings during the 1960s, believing he was simply doing his job under the pressures of leading a network series. Over time, he acknowledged that he may have unintentionally come across as aloof or overly assertive, and he admitted feeling ashamed that his colleagues carried those impressions for decades. The disagreement over how those early years should be remembered became almost a second narrative running parallel to Star Trek's cultural impact. As conventions, documentaries, and retrospectives emerged in the 1970s and beyond, old wounds were reopened and retold, each actor offering their own truth. What remained constant was the tension between personal recollection and public myth. A reminder that even as Star Trek portrayed unity on screen, its cast continued to wrestle with unresolved feelings from the earliest days of their shared journey. 4. Partial reconciliations and shifting relationships off-screen. As the original Star Trek era faded into the 1980s, the cast found themselves drawn back together through films, conventions, and the growing fandom that transformed the series into a global phenomenon. These reunions slowly reshaped some of the strained relationships that had developed during the 1960s production years. William Shatner, now older and more reflective, began reconnecting with colleagues in ways that softened long-standing friction. At conventions, he shared stages with actors who once felt sidelined, and in various anniversary specials and documentaries, he worked closely with them again, often in a more collaborative spirit than during the show's early days. Some cast members publicly acknowledged that time had eased earlier bitterness. Certain colleagues said they better understood the pressures Shatner had faced as the series lead: constant studio demands, tight shooting schedules, and mounting expectations during a period when Star Trek struggled to survive cancellation threats. These insights helped repair personal rifts, leading to more cordial interactions and, in some cases, genuine friendship in later years. Shatner himself contributed to this thaw, engaging more openly with the ensemble and occasionally expressing regret if his past behavior had caused unintended hurt. However, not every relationship healed. A few cast members continued to criticize Shatner well into the 1990s and 2000s, speaking candidly about lingering grievances regarding his conduct on set or his approach to leadership during the original series. Their criticisms often resurfaced during press tours for the feature films or during convention Q&As, keeping older tensions alive in the public narrative. Some felt Shatner never fully acknowledged the impact of his earlier actions. Others believed his explanations, sometimes defensive, sometimes apologetic, did not match their lived experiences. Shatner responded in varied tones over the decades. At times, he defended his decisions as necessary for the show's success, emphasizing that he was unaware of the resentment at the time. At other moments, particularly later in life, he admitted that pressures and insecurity may have shaped his behavior more than he realized. He spoke openly about wishing he had been more attuned to the feelings of his castmates and expressed appreciation for those who had chosen to reconcile. 5. Leonard Nimoy's death and Shatner's absence from the funeral. The death of Leonard Nimoy in February 2015 sent shockwaves through the Star Trek community and the entertainment world at large. Nimoy, who had become an icon as Spock, was mourned by fans, colleagues, and fellow actors alike. Among the most widely reported stories surrounding his passing was the notable absence of William Shatner at the funeral. Media coverage quickly highlighted that Shatner, who had portrayed Captain Kirk and shared decades of screen history with Nimoy, would not be attending the memorial service. Shatner explained publicly via social media that he had a prior charity commitment he could not cancel, and he expressed regret at missing the opportunity to pay his respects in person. The absence fueled speculation, not only about the logistics of scheduling, but also about the state of their personal relationship in Nimoy's final years. Over time, details emerged that suggested a more complicated dynamic had developed between the two men. While they had shared some public camaraderie during conventions and interviews, Shatner later revealed that a personal estrangement had taken root in the later stages of Nimoy's life. He admitted he did not fully understand the reasons behind Nimoy's decision to distance himself and stop speaking to him, describing the silence as both confusing and painful. 6. Memoir revelations. Shatner writes about the friendship breakdown with Nimoy. In 2016, William Shatner offered one of the most candid insights into his off-screen life with Leonard Nimoy through his memoirs and a series of interviews. After decades of professional collaboration and personal friendship, Shatner revealed the painful reality that the two men had not been speaking during Nimoy's final years. The admission shocked fans who had long celebrated the iconic Kirk-Spock partnership as emblematic of both on-screen unity and off-screen camaraderie. Shatner's reflections were marked by honesty and a striking vulnerability. He confessed that he did not fully understand why Nimoy had withdrawn, noting that attempts to communicate were either rebuffed or went unanswered. He expressed genuine confusion, describing the estrangement as a source of deep regret. Shatner acknowledged that, looking back, there were actions he wished he had taken differently, moments where perhaps he could have reached out more thoughtfully or been more sensitive to Nimoy's feelings. This acknowledgement painted a portrait of a man confronting the consequences of miscommunication and the fragile nature of long-term relationships. 7. Renewed public feuds with some co-stars, George Takei and others, and Shatner's responses. Between 2016 and 2022, William Shatner found himself once again navigating the turbulent waters of public disagreement with certain Star Trek co-stars, most prominently George Takei. In interviews, book promotions, and media appearances during this period, Shatner addressed long-standing criticisms regarding his conduct on set during the 1960s. He described some of the attacks as bitter, suggesting they were sometimes amplified by colleagues' interest in media attention or the commercial appeal of recounting dramatic behind-the-scenes stories. Shatner frequently expressed frustration that old disputes had been aired publicly after decades, particularly when they overshadowed his ongoing projects or charitable work. Takei, however, remained outspoken. He repeatedly criticized Shatner's behavior during the original series, recalling moments when he felt ignored, dismissed, or marginalized. Takei's accounts emphasize that while Shatner was the show's lead, his approach sometimes undermined the collaborative spirit that Takei and other ensemble members hoped for. 8. Financial and personal confessions. Royalties and not watching the show. Between 2020 and 2025, William Shatner made a series of strikingly candid admissions regarding his relationship with Star Trek, revealing facets of his experience that many fans had long assumed were different. One of the most personal revelations concerned his viewing habits. Shatner openly admitted that he avoids watching most episodes of the original series, explaining in interviews that seeing his younger self on screen is painful. He described the experience as confronting a version of himself shaped by the pressures, insecurities, and youthful energy of the 1960s, an era he remembers as both thrilling and exhausting. For Shatner, the emotional distance he feels from the episodes is less about the content of the show and more about facing the memories of a past self under intense scrutiny and expectations. Equally surprising were Shatner's discussions about the financial realities of his early television career. Contrary to the common perception that actors from the original series became wealthy through syndication royalties, Shatner has repeatedly clarified that he did not personally benefit from rerun residuals in the way many fans assume. In social media posts dating back to 2020, he explained that pre-1973 television contracts often included little or no residual payments, meaning that despite the show's later global success, many performers, including himself, saw limited financial reward from syndication. Later interviews reinforced this reality, in which Shatner described the irony of seeing Star Trek achieve monumental cultural and commercial success while personally receiving minimal monetary gain from its enduring popularity. What do you think about William Shatner's revelations about the Star Trek set? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this, and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.